Long ago, in the peaceful land of Galilee, a man named Jesus became a beacon of hope for many souls searching for truth. As a compassionate teacher, Jesus not only taught about God's love, but also guided people on how to live a life of righteousness. His wise teachings and the amazing miracles he performed drew people from all over to hear him speak. Jesus' popularity did not come from his power or position, but from his sincerity, heavenly power and compassion for all people, especially those who suffered. From the country roads to the bustling crowds, people were eager to hear his words. As the crowd grew, Jesus decided to leave the flat ground and go up to the high mountainside where he could be seen and heard. He was accompanied by his closest disciples, who had always followed closely in his footsteps. It was there, in the quiet of nature, that Jesus began a great sermon that would later be known as the Sermon on the Mount. He began by proclaiming the Beatitudes for those who seemed to be forgotten in society: the poor in spirit, the humble, those who mourn, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. With these words, he overturned the worldly view, making it clear that external weakness does not detract from inner spiritual worth. In this sermon, Jesus unabashedly declares that those who were once despised, the sad, the oppressed, and the marginalized, are the ones favored by God. He says that the humble in spirit will inherit the earth, the merciful will be shown mercy, and those who keep their hearts pure will see God. These blessings are not mere words of comfort, but rather a guarantee that God is at work in seemingly hopeless situations. In doing so, Jesus shows that true value lies not in position, power, or wealth, but in love, endurance, and faith. He paints a world inverted where the weak become strong in the eyes of God. Jesus' teachings are a call to love that goes beyond the conventional limits of love. He not only tells people to love their neighbors, but also to love those who harm them. In a spirit of innovation and challenge to old norms, Jesus invites people to abandon revenge and instead respond to hatred with kindness. He says that instead of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, turn the other cheek if you are struck, and if someone takes your shirt, offer your cloak. This is not weakness, but the power of forgiveness. Living this way requires courage, the courage to not fight back, to do the right thing when you are wronged. Continuing the teaching of love, Jesus called on people to live truthfully, avoiding hypocrisy and ostentation in moral actions. He emphasized that God does not measure goodness through external rituals, but looks deep into the soul. When praying, do it quietly. When helping others, do not boast. He also taught people not to worry too much about life, about food, clothing, or the future. Just as birds do not sow but are still nourished, flowers in the field do not weave but are more beautiful than king's clothes, people are even more carefully cared for by God. Through this, Jesus invited people to put their complete trust in God, to live simply, peacefully, and to let go of useless worries. Jesus called on people to stop judging and instead learn to understand. He taught that before we see the faults of others, we need to look at ourselves, like removing a speck from our own eye before helping others. He warned that judgment will be judged by the same yardstick. Not only that, Jesus also gave a basic but profound principle of life that later generations called the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This principle lays the foundation for all relationships, from family to community. Through it, Jesus taught that mutual respect and love are not optional, but are essential to living according to God's will. In his sermon, Jesus affirmed that love is more important than any religious rule. Jesus did not reject the ancient laws, but he emphasized that they only have meaning when practiced in sincere love. Observing the law without mercy is no longer righteous. He taught that the relationship between people and God must be expressed through acts of love, forgiveness, and care for one another. Loving God and loving one's neighbor are not two separate things, but a dual command. According to Jesus, living a religious life is not only about religious rituals, but also expressed in every small act, from forgiving sins to sharing a meal with the hungry. When Jesus finished his sermon, the people were amazed at what they had heard. They had never heard anyone teach with such authority, gentleness, and understanding. Not only was the content of the sermon profound, but Jesus spoke with the conviction of one with heavenly authority. His teachings were not only relevant at the time, but also timeless, still resonating today. The Sermon on the Mount has become the moral foundation for millions, inspiring a life of selflessness, humility, and love. It shows that true happiness does not come from wealth or status, but from a heart that lives for others and is always turned toward God. That is the path that leads people to true peace.